were you always attuned to like a second tier spiral dynamics weak consciousness, or was there a moment on your path where you expanded into that knowingness and embodiment of our interconnectedness?
That's good. I think that somewhere in my early 20s, I kind of like I think I was 16 when it kind of like that my journey like took off to the real layer, no? And for a while, it was just the realization that the biggest realization was that we create our own reality. That was the biggest thing. And then it took me a while to really realize that what's really most important, yes, everybody's creating their own reality. That's very important. And that's kind of like basic. You have to learn that. But beyond that is what's really important is to realize that everything already exists. We're just rearranging ourselves, rearranging matter, and the more careful and kind and it's like you're making art. I mean, there's different kinds of ways to make art, but I'm talking about kind of like a dance, like you start falling in love with making art. And so the way you start treating reality, the way you start treating people becomes an art, and kind of like that goes to a whole other level, like gradually that kind of started becoming, because I've been doing art, my whole life, but it kind of like evolved to that point where you realize that living life is an art, and the greatest piece of art is our relationships, and so that's kind of like, it's been gradual and more and more, and when I kind of ran into the Gene Keys, that kind of like really shifted my perspective from how can I manifest what I want into what do I have to give. And that was a huge shift in consciousness, because you can't get really stuck on the like, I want a Ferrari and I want $1 million. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point you realize that those are toys. The real, juice of life is those moments that you spend with people, and you're having fun, and the life is, I mean, that's when life is good, when you're hanging out with good people, having a good time.
Mm-hmm. So there's so many places I want to go, but what gifts have you come here to share with the world?
Everything, everything that I have. I mean, it's like the more I dive into the Gene Keys, I was telling you last time that I see the hologenetic profile really just as the entrance of the house, like the hall. And the more you dive into everything, it's like I'm kind of just seeing these are just snapshots. The 64 Gene Keys are just snapshots of kind of like archetypes of a larger ways of that consciousness expands through reality. But when you realize that you can dive into all of these areas, you realize you have all of the gifts. The 64, it's the whole thing, and it's so exciting to just like realize that life is so much more than our consciousness is fixed on the things of the matrix, and it's like, it's time to explore how deep can we go and connect with people.
Mm-hmm. I'm really intrigued to learn more about your Gene Keys journey. And you just said something that I don't want to get too far away. You mentioned, because there is the hologenetic profile with its 11 spheres. And I noticed in my time in the Gene Keys community, people can get really hung up on like, well, my keys and I have blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of us forget that we really do have them all. So how do you like wrangle any like that tension between like the urge to identify with what's in our profile and then the reality, which is we all have all of them?
Well, number one, I don't necessarily believe in astrology. I think that astrology is solved by a constellation. And so I'm the kind of person that I listen to everything and I take and I just pay it.
Hey, superstars, I'm interrupting our current programming to remind you to click that subscribe button, to like, to share, to comment. Your comments go a long way in convincing the algorithm to give me more reach. As well, I am inviting you to click that bell so that you'll be notified every time I post an awesome video. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
I'm the kind of person that I listen to everything and I take and I just pay attention to everything. And I kind of have like a mixer, like a mixer of music where you have different tracks, right? I have a kind of like a mixer in my mind or in my heart, right? And I have all these tracks with different things, and I'm kind of mixing stuff and taking a little bit of less of that, a little bit of this. I'm gonna put a little bit of treble on that, a little more bass on that one, and that's kind of how I go. And so I look at the hologenetic profile and what I'm really doing, I'm using it as a resonance tool. Like I definitely I feel that there's definitely a lot of wisdom in its structure, and I ultimately, the way that I ultimately see is that you can see God in everything. And so if you're looking at the hologenetic profile as the hologenetic profile with the structure that it has, and this is the reason why I love the gene keys, the way that I see it is because I don't see it as a standard. I see it as a box of hints, as a map, as a tool. And so what I'm looking into, for example, I'm looking at my culture, right? And I understand that that's the way that I connect with my fractal soul family, right? And I love that, and I love that. And so my contemplation, what I see is my consciousness is observing that concept. And so it's not necessarily the hologenetic profile, but I'm taking that idea and now I'm putting it in my attention, and now God's shining through that, and then it's going to bounce back and ripple back the information that I want. So I definitely use the hologenetic profile, and I don't care that it comes from, that it uses astrology or human design. I don't really know that much in human design. I know that I'm a 5-1 and I'm a manifestor generator, but that's about it. You too? You're a 5-1 too? But that's about as much as I know. And I just love, numbers and exploring, making connections and the programming partners. And so I see it as a game, as a toy, like like I'm having fun with it. It's like a board game. Mm-hmm. But the real power, it's not in the system or in the guru or in the teacher or in the system, whatever. The real power is in your focus, because that's when you're really tapping into the quantum field. That's the way that I see it. Your attention on anything, it's like the internet back in the day when we didn't have like Twitter and stuff. You would go through these websites and then they would go through a link that leads you to another link, and next night, 5 hours later, you're somewhere else, and it kind of like it connects you. And that's exactly how consciousness works. And so that's the real power that I see, because the other thing that I see that Richard did magnificently is that he created so much. I mean, I haven't even gone through the dream arc, and I want to go through that whole thing because I've always been into shamanism and stuff. And so I see all of these as tools. Do not give your power away to it. And I see it in everything, I mean, obviously it happens too in the Jinky community, just like it happens on Christianism, or it happens on, yoga. People's personality begins to start putting things in boxes because we want to find that security, that safety, and it doesn't exist. Life is wild, and so what I do for myself is I see it as like a compass, like a tool, a flashlight, and it's very ordered, and I'm kind of ordered a little bit inside of myself. So I like that order and that vastness, and and then I go in my own trips. I'm writing a book, and I have my characters have gene keys, and then that helps me write their dialogue, and then I start making connections, and oh well, maybe that one goes with that one because he's the programming partner of this one, and so I have fun with that stuff. I think that's the most important. Just have fun, realize that everybody's is where they are, and they're doing the best they can, and just the way that I see myself is I've been there. I've been the fanatic, and so I understand that it's a phase. At some point, you just find this moment where you need to define your own voice and make your own specific mix of the final track, right? And I use all things for that.